My name is Celeste Mara Donnelly, 35. People think betrayals are noisy. Slammed doors, shouted threats, plates shattering. Mine arrived at 7:12 a.m. on my wedding day as a text with no punctuation. Don't expect anyone to show. Best of luck. It was from my mother. I stared at the screen so long my reflection blurred in it. I powered my phone off, then on, as if I'd misread my own life. No correction arrived. In the dressing room mirror, my stylist pinned the last curl into a low twist and asked if I wanted romantic or practical for the veil. I picked romantic because at that point, practicality had already lost. Down the hall, Aiden, my boyfriend, was getting ready with his best man and my two closest friends from college. We'd kept the ceremony small, a coastal lodge with cedar beams and a view that felt like a promise. I hadn't told Aiden the full truth about my parents' opinions, the way Dad called him a soft bet, the way Mom described him as ambition adjacent, like love requires an investment pitch. They'd always spoken about relationships like mergers. When we got engaged, they smiled in group photos and assessed his family line like due diligence. A truck-driving father, a mother who worked retail, no strategic overlap. They never said poor. They said not positioned. The ceremony began. The chairs on my side remained a clean row of absence. I kept my eyes on Aiden, who looked like someone who doesn't know how to pretend. We said vows. We kissed. His mother cried into a tissue she'd ironed flat the night before. Our friends cheered and carried us to the reception like the world was as simple as cake and dancing and forever. Maybe it could have been, if not for a cousin who never learned privacy settings. Sometime around sunset, when I stepped outside to breathe and accept that the empty seats would stay empty, my phone buzzed with a notification. I thumbed it open, and there they were. Private beach, Maui, sunglasses, sundresses, linen shirts, champagne held high. The caption read, "Finally together. #family forever." My parents, my sister and her husband, 2 aunts, even my father's business partner, not blood, grinning like he'd inherited our last name. They had chosen the exact hour I said my vows to post their own celebration, a parallel party where I did not exist. I watched the ocean on my screen pretend to be endless. Then I retucked my phone into my clutch, walked back inside, and let Aiden spin me under strung lights until the wooden floor shook. He asked later if I was okay. I said, I am now. It wasn't a lie. It was a decision. The following Monday, I walked into the office we built with my father, a space of glass and confidence I'd designed myself. Reception said good morning. I smiled, unlocked my door, and sat in the chair I'd earned. My name was still on the charter. I still had the admin keys. The corporate cards still pulsed like veins under every personal indulgence my family had normalized into operational necessity. By noon, I filed the paperwork to remove myself from the business entity. By 4, I froze every corporate expense account tied to the family. Phones, flights, hotels, cars, the lake house utilities they called team offsites. All of it. I timed it so the holds would bite midweek, while Maui sunblock still glowed on their shoulders. The group chat detonated before dinner. Dad first. Call me now. Then my sister. What did you do? Then the shared thread where my name lit up like a siren I never wanted to be. I ignored them, set my phone face down, and ate leftover cake with Aiden on our couch. When the notifications stacked into a tower, I sent one message into the family ether. Perfect timing. Then I turned the phone off again and opened the bottle of wine he'd been saving for a good day. It tasted like the opposite of surrender. A week of silence taught me how loud quiet can be when people are used to you absorbing impact. I did not return a single call. Not my father's, not my sister's, not even my mother's twin. Are you serious texts that tried to weaponize disbelief into apology? Aiden noticed the difference in me before anyone else did. He didn't interrogate it. He simply made space. Coffee in the mornings, a new plant on the windowsill, his hand on my knee at red lights. He knows my tells. He also knows when to wait for the story to come out on its own. The knock arrived at 6:50 a.m. on a Thursday, early enough that refusal would seem rude. It wasn't a knock so much as a verdict, 3 hard fists that made the door frame shiver. I already knew who it was. When I opened, my father stood there in an overpressed shirt and designer slacks, Maui tan still clinging to him like an alibi. He didn't say hello. He didn't ask to come in. He launched. "You embarrass me," he snapped. "You crippled the family. Freezing those accounts mid-trip? We were stranded. Your sister and her husband made a down payment based on our cash flow, and you cut them off." He made family sound like a balance sheet. "You threw a grenade into everything." I sipped my coffee and let his words burn out their fuel. When he paused to breathe, I said, calm as a ledger, "I gave you every chance. You made your choice." Something in him shifted, rage to contempt. "You're being emotional," he said, the oldest trick. "You're making a scene over one missed event. You think maturity is revenge? You owe me. I built that company from nothing. I thought about all the nights I stayed, all the deals I papered, how often he called me kid in rooms I negotiated. I kept my voice even. The charter changes are final. If you want the company whole, you can buy my stake at market rate, cash up front. Corporate cards are permanently closed. Travel, leases, all freezes remain." He blinked, unprepared for a daughter who didn't mistake certainty for cruelty. "What do you expect us to do?" "Figure it out," I said, and closed the door. He pounded and threw old threats at new walls. I finished my coffee and scrolled through wedding photos, a collage of joy that needed no apology for missing faces. That afternoon, I called my attorney and erected a firewall around the remainder of my interests. I revoked every shared access, canceled the autopay propping up my sister's second property. Not a single change was spiked. Each one was a correction, a book finally balancing. The first cracks showed up where complacency always hides. A shared car lease bounced, and the dealer called my personal line out of habit. A vendor flagged an overdue invoice. The building sent a warning about late rent. I did nothing but watch the dominoes realize they'd always been held by my hand. 2 weeks in, the group chat turned into a triage tent. My sister begged for someone to cover the lake house utilities. My aunt complained about a declined card for Scottsdale. Dad posted vague promises like duct tape. No one typed the 2 words I was waiting to see. "I'm sorry." Instead, they performed Shahnam amnesia. As if I hadn't spent a decade constructing tax shields they bragged about at dinner parties. As if the real estate trusts and expense pipelines had been conjured by the sheer force of their last names. I'd done the work. They'd done the posing. Now the posing had to pay a bill, and the room went very quiet. The mortgage call came next, because consequences eventually ring the right number. A year earlier, during a softer season, I'd co-signed my sister's new suburban castle. 3 bathrooms and a lawn so green it looked photoshopped. She didn't ask. She cried. I signed. With the freezes in place and household income under review, the bank flagged the arrangement and asked if I would be reaffirming my role. "No," I said, "not anymore." 3 days later, my sister finally called. No hello. No how are you, just, "You can't do this to us." That plural told me everything I needed to know about who she believed I belonged to. I let it ring out and blocked the number. That night, Aiden and I ate takeout on the couch and watched reruns. He tucked my feet under his leg to warm them and didn't ask for a play-by-play. That kind of trust isn't flashy. It's a door that opens and never slams. Somewhere between the 2nd and 3rd episode, I realized something simple and devastating. I hadn't burned anything down. I'd just stopped holding it up. Silence is never really silent with my family. It hums, like a power line you forgot you were standing under. For a week, my phone thrummed with unsent replies. I stacked the noise in a mental box labeled, "Not mine to fix," and went about my days. Coffee with Aiden in the blue light, emails, a jog along the waterline, dinner we cooked together like we were learning a language only we spoke. On Tuesday, a dealership called. "Hi, Ms. Donnelly. We're following up on the corporate car lease. The payment bounced. We must have the wrong card on file?" "You don't," I said, kind. "The company will need to resolve it directly." A pause, then the soft click of a note being typed into a system. The first bead of water behind a wall. That afternoon, a vendor forwarded an overdue invoice to the inbox I still monitored from long practice, 2 weeks unpaid. The subject line, friendly reminder, watched me like a neighbor who heard shouting next door and pretended it was the TV. I filed it where it belonged. Evidence, not emergency. By Wednesday, the building management emailed Dad and CC'd the executive list, which used to include me, requiring 3 months' rent in advance due to operational instability. I hadn't said a word to them. You don't have to shout when gravity is on your side. At 9:10 p.m., the family thread lit up. Sister, who can cover lake house utilities this month? They shut off hot water today. Aunt, my card got flagged for Scottsdale. Is this related? Dad, handled. Everyone breathe. Handled. He loved that word, rolled it on his tongue like it was a brand he wore. I put my phone face down, leaned into Aiden's shoulder, and felt my lungs expand all the way to the bottom. Thursday morning, I made eggs while Ellie from down the hall practiced scales, the world sounding like someone trying to learn joy by repetition. I shouldn't have heard the chime in the bedroom, but my brain hears some tones even through walls. Unknown number. I didn't pick up. The voicemail transcribed into a gray block. We should meet. There's a way to reset without escalating. No name. The punctuation of someone who thinks tone does most of the work. 2 hours later, an email arrived from a man whose name I dimly recalled from a boardroom. Tie too tight. Smile practiced. Let's discuss preserving legacy without sacrificing values. Legacy as if it were a fragile heirloom instead of a word my father used when he wanted me to agree without evidence. I archived it. Behind the gloss, I could already see the hook. Come back, not as who you are, but as who we can stand. Aiden caught my expression as I closed the laptop. Pitch? Performance, I said. Different P. He grinned. Remind me to bring popcorn to the next one. By Saturday, the mortgage mess matured. A banker called to confirm whether I'd be reaffirming my role as co-signer on my sister's suburban monument to denial. No, I said. Withdraw my name. I listened to the hold music, try to make it pleasant to be reintroduced to consequences. My sister texted within the hour from a new number. No greeting. You can't do this to us. Us. The plural that always meant the collective where I owed and they owned. I let it ring in the dark and pressed block with a steadiness that felt like muscle, not mood. I thought that was the storm. I was wrong. The sky had more. On Monday, security buzzed and announced my father, voice clipped. I could have said no. Instead, I took the elevator down and met him in the lobby, made of glass and light and my work. He didn't sit. The vendor relationships are spooked. Fix it. I didn't break them, I said. You froze corporate accounts in the middle of a trip, he said, as if the offense were etiquette. You stranded your family. Your mother went without on her own sons. He stopped himself, remembering he'd forfeited the right to say the word wedding. He pivoted. You've made a scene. It's beneath you. I felt oddly calm, like standing in a room I'd already evacuated. Buy my steak at market rate and the scene ends, I said. Cash. No, we'll make it right later. No, trust me. Later and trust are temporarily out of rotation. He scoffed. This is a tantrum over one event. One event doesn't require a caption that says finally together, I said. One event isn't a strategy. He flinched at the word. He taught me language like that, how to make choices sound clean. He had not anticipated I'd learn to use it on him. He leaned in just enough to make other men in lobbies feel complicit. You owe me. I owed integrity, I said. I paid it. I glanced at my watch. I have a call. He followed me a step, voice low. You'll regret this. You don't know what it costs to build a world. I do, I said, because I built it. He left. No stomping. Just a quiet retreat that felt more dangerous, like a wave drawing back. That night, I threw pasta into a pan while Aiden uncorked a bottle with his phone light pressed against the glass to read the year. To us, he said, raising it. For not being legacy, for being choice. We ate sitting on the counter, knees touching, the room smelling like garlic and something better than victory. He told me a story about his ex-girlfriend who once laughed at the way his mother folded napkins for holidays and called it cute. He'd said it like a compliment. The ex had not. I watched the thread line up, what my mother had called not positioned, what Dad had called soft bet, and felt the old itch to defend the people who nicknamed care into contempt. I'm glad you didn't marry cute, I said. He smiled. Me too. Wednesday brought a letter, not email, paper, from a law firm with a name that sounded like old wood. Intent to sue for breach of fiduciary duty. The phrases were familiar. sabotaged operations, reputational harm, jeopardized shared assets. It was nonsense, but legally shaped nonsense. I scanned it once, then forwarded it to Lena, my attorney. Sharp, unflappable, the kind of quiet that makes other people confess. She called without preamble. "They're trying to box you in before the cash flow starves them," she said. "We'll let them file. Then we'll open the cupboards." "Discovery?" I asked. "Discovery," she said, almost kindly. "You documented everything." I had. It wasn't paranoia. It was survival. The internal emails, the expense trails, the minutes for calls where I'd done the work and someone else signed the checks. Every time I'd been told, just make it happen and don't make noise, I'd created a map. You don't need to scream when the floor plan leads people directly to their own exits. The next morning, I called Dennis at Logistics, a man who'd been steady through storms. "Off the record," I said, "you might want to hold the next 2 bulk shipments. There's instability. I don't want you caught in it." He exhaled through his teeth. "Heard whispers," he said. "Appreciate the straight talk." "Always," I said, and meant it. By Friday, the international partner who'd only stayed in because of me asked for a call. "I'll be exiting," he said. "No offense. You did right. But I invest in ballast." "Same," I said. Hours later, the management company at headquarters served notice. Pay 3 months ahead or prepare to vacate. I didn't write it. I didn't have to. I had simply stopped co-signing a future I wasn't invited to inhabit. The family group chat turned into triage with a side of theater. Aunt, "Can we do a public post? People are asking about the office." Sister, "Do not post. Keep it private." Dad, "We're restructuring. Everyone stay on message." "What message? That collapse is a branding issue?" I closed the app and went to check the mail like a person whose life includes other verbs. There was an unfamiliar envelope with my name handwritten on the front, looping script I recognized from childhood permission slips my sister had forged. Inside, a printed resume screenshot forwarded by a friend in HR who'd scribbled a sticky note. "Figured you'd want to see this." Under experience, my sister had listed herself as managing director of our company for the last 4 years. Bullet points sparkling with achievements I'd bled for. She'd used my personal number as her reference. I stood in the foyer for a long minute, the way you stand in a museum in front of a painting you don't like but can't look away from. Then I texted a single sentence from a number she hadn't blocked because she didn't know it existed. "Don't ever use my name again. No threats. No explanation. Just a line in ink." Within an hour, her LinkedIn vanished. Mutuals stopped tagging. The scrub was almost impressive, like a magician snap-hiding a coin you'd already spent. Saturday, I found myself at the window with tea, watching our street do its weekend. Dog walkers, someone carrying a fern like a trophy, 2 teenagers laughing too loud and not caring. The phone sat face down beside me. The quiet didn't feel like waiting anymore. It felt like room. Aiden came up behind me and hooked his chin over my shoulder. "What are you building in there?" he asked, meaning my head. "A life with fewer passwords to things that aren't mine," I said. He kissed the side of my face, then pointed down at the sidewalk where the light clipped the edge of our building just so, like a curtain lifting. "Look," he said, "the day changed clothes while we weren't watching." I laughed. Perfect timing. When people say time heals, they forget to mention that time also reveals, and sometimes what it shows is worse than the wound. By the 3rd week, the legal threat hadn't materialized into an actual lawsuit yet, which meant they were circling, plotting angles, testing the water before diving in. I could feel it. My father was the type who believed strategy meant patience wrapped in politeness. The first move came in my inbox. An email from Harold Boone, one of Dad's old business associates. I'd seen him maybe twice. A handshake, a cologne cloud, a laugh that sounded rehearsed. Subject line, private discussion, preserving legacy. He opened with flattery, the kind that thinks it's currency. "Celeste, I've always admired your eye for structure. Your father's worried this rift is doing long-term damage to the family legacy. I believe there's a way to mend fences without anyone losing face." I could almost hear my father dictating it. Legacy, face, mend, always verbs that meant control. I didn't reply. 2 days later, a formal letter arrived from a Boston law firm that my father loved to brag about using for strategic issues. Their subject line, proposal for reintegration of partnership and brand stabilization. The tone was nauseatingly diplomatic. equal parts corporate therapy and veiled threat. They offered to reinstate me as an independent strategic lead with a generous salary, reinstated shares, and public recognition of my renewed collaboration. It was almost believable until I hit clause 14 at the bottom of the PDF. Reinstatement is subject to the realignment of personal affiliations that conflict with brand image or long-term partner confidence. They didn't say his name, but I could see it clearly enough. Aiden. My father didn't want his family brand tainted by a boyfriend who grew up middle class, whose mother worked 2 jobs, who didn't play golf with investors or own a pressed suit until I bought him one for my cousin's wedding. They wanted me back, but without the one person who stayed when they didn't. I closed the laptop. That night, Aiden and I were walking home from dinner, takeout box between us, when I saw her, my mother, standing outside our building like a shadow that had rehearsed its entrance. Her hair was carefully undone, the effortless look that actually takes an hour. Her makeup whispered, "I'm tired but reasonable." When she saw us, her face softened with that same old weaponized sadness. "I came alone," she said quickly. "Your father doesn't know I'm here." I believed that part. She always preferred her own missions. I didn't move closer. "What do you want?" She clasped her purse with both hands, like she needed to hold on to something. "To fix this. It's gone too far, Celeste. The company's struggling. Everyone's angry. No one's talking. Someone has to be the adult." "You came to negotiate, not fix," I said. Her eyes flickered. "I just think deep down you know he's not part of the future we built." Aiden stayed silent beside me, but I could feel him go still. I took a step forward, my voice low but steady. "You built that future without me, the second you booked a flight to Maui." She blinked fast, like the words stung. "You're throwing away everything." "I'm throwing away nothing that wasn't already broken," I said. Then I took Aiden's hand and walked past her. I didn't look back. That night, at 1:42 a.m., my phone pinged with a new email from the same law firm. Subject line, urgent, intent to sue for breach of fiduciary duty. There it was, the pretense stripped away. I forwarded it to Lena, my attorney. Her reply came 6 minutes later. "Good. Let them file. They're bluffing, and they just gave us evidence of bad faith." The next morning, we met in her office, a space as neat as her cross-examinations. She read through the complaint while I sat quietly, tracing the edge of a coffee mug. "They're claiming you intentionally sabotaged company operations," she said, "and that your actions caused reputational damage." I almost laughed. "They skipped my wedding for a vacation in Maui. They caused reputational damage to themselves." She smiled faintly. "We'll dismantle it. I'll file a counter and subpoena internal correspondence. You documented everything, right?" "Every email, every transaction, every invoice," I said. "Then," she said, "this is already over. They just don't know it yet." By Thursday, Lena had filed a counterclaim so airtight it could have suffocated. She attached the expense reports, the admin logs, and even the meeting minutes where Dad's oversight looked a lot like negligence. I didn't have to shout. Truth doesn't need volume when it has timestamps. The following Monday, I called Dennis, the logistics partner who'd worked with me for years, a man with calloused hands and more integrity than any boardroom I'd ever sat in. "Off the record," I told him, "you might want to delay the next shipment. The company's not stable. I'd hate to see you get caught in the mess." He sighed, already knowing. "I figured. Your dad tried to push through an order last week without confirming payment. I held it. Thanks for the heads up." "Anytime," I said. By Wednesday, the building management company served a formal notice. Due to concerns over solvency, 3 months' rent must be prepaid or the premises will be vacated. It was surgical. Lena hadn't lifted a finger. Consequences move on their own once the truth's oxygen-starved. That same day, an international investor, one of the few left, sent a short, polite email, regretfully withdrawing involvement. "This was never personal. You did the right thing." They always said that last part when it was already over. The family chat turned from pleading to damage control. "Dad, we're restructuring." "Sister, don't post anything. Just stay quiet." "Mom, we need to talk to her again." I muted the thread. I'd heard the conversations before they even typed them. 2 days later, Lena called. "They've gone radio silent," she said. "That's the first sign of panic." "Good," I said. "Let them hear their own echo." But that echo wasn't done yet. Saturday morning, I met a woman named Rachel at a diner downtown. She worked in HR at a mid-sized accounting firm and had reached out with a cryptic email. "I think you'll want to see this." She slid a folded page across the table, a printed screenshot. At the top was my sister's name. Beneath it, Managing Director, Donnelly and Company, 2019 to 2023. She'd listed client strategy, revenue growth, and executive oversight as her achievements, my achievements. And at the bottom, under references, my name and personal phone number. Rachel said quietly, "She applied here. She was confident. Too confident. I thought you should know." I stared at the paper for a long time before folding it neatly in half. "Thank you," I said. Back in my car, I drafted one message. "Don't ever use my name again." No signature, no punctuation, just a period of its own. She didn't reply, but within an hour, her LinkedIn disappeared. Our mutual contacts untagged her. The erasure was almost artful. For once, I wasn't angry. I wasn't shocked. I was done. Done carrying her guilt. Done explaining myself to people who never once listened. That night, Aiden and I sat on the couch eating Chinese takeout. The legal storm swirled somewhere far away, but here, the world was quiet. He asked softly, "Do you ever think they'll apologize?" "No," I said, "but one day they'll understand what they lost." He nodded. "And what about you?" I looked at him, at the man who'd stayed through every silence. "I didn't lose anything," I said. "I just stopped mistaking obligation for love." Outside, rain started tapping against the glass, the kind of soft, steady rhythm that feels like permission. I realized then the negotiation had already happened, and I'd already won. By early spring, the storm stopped pretending it wasn't a storm. Emails trickled to Lena instead of me, copies of filings, withdrawals, and finally, the line I'd been waiting for. Case dismissed with prejudice. In plain English, it meant they'd lost. Permanently. There was no apology, no letter, not even a message through my mother's favorite messenger. Guilt. Just silence. And that, somehow, was louder than any courtroom win. The business went under faster than I expected. No headlines, no scandal, just a quiet implosion that left behind an empty office and a disconnected number. The website disappeared one morning, and the family logo, our last name in polished gold serif, blinked out of existence like it had never mattered. The truth is, I didn't even celebrate. I just sat on the edge of my bed and breathed. The company had always been more than a business to them. It was proof of control. My father called it legacy. My mother called it family. But legacy built on ownership is just a prison with better furniture. And I'd finally escaped it. One last ripple came from an unexpected place. An HR manager from another firm reached out. "Celeste," she said, "this might be nothing, but I thought you'd want to see it." Another application. This time, my sister again. She'd claimed to be executive operations lead for the company until its closure. She even used a variation of my email address as her reference contact. Slightly misspelled, but close enough that it would redirect. I stared at the page, laughed once, then texted Lena, "Add identity misrepresentation to the record, just in case." She replied with a simple thumbs-up emoji and the words, "Poetic symmetry." Weeks passed. Then one morning, while I was working from home, the doorbell rang. I looked through the camera feed. My mother. Alone again. No makeup this time. No pretense. I didn't open the door. She looked at the lens and spoke anyway, her voice a mix of pleading and pride. "Are you really going through with this restraining order? You're ruining what's left of us." I didn't answer. After a long pause, she said, "You're not cruel. I know that. You're just hurt." She was wrong. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was healed enough to stop needing their approval for the healing to count. That night, Aiden made dinner. Grilled vegetables and a cheap bottle of wine we'd been saving for no reason. Halfway through the meal, he said, "You know, you've been smiling in your sleep lately." "Maybe that's what peace looks like," I said. He reached across this table and squeezed my hand. "Peace looks good on you." It was a small sentence, but it landed deeper than any "I'm proud of you" ever had. Spring came, then summer. The family group chat was long dead, but one evening, a new notification popped up. A Facebook post from my mother, public, of course. Some people don't know how to forgive, but I pray for them anyway, especially the ones raising children to do the same. There it was, the guilt sermon disguised as virtue. I didn't comment. I didn't block immediately either. I just watched the post sit there for 3 hours before she deleted it, probably after realizing silence doesn't grant her the audience she craved. Then I blocked her and Dad and my sister all in one quiet motion. It felt cleaner than I expected. That weekend, Aunt Helen, my mother's older sister, called. "Sweetheart," she said, her voice gentler than I remembered. "I saw what happened. You did the right thing." "Does Mom know you called me?" I asked. She doesn't have to, she said. I just wanted you to hear from at least one person in this family who believes you. I didn't realize how much that would mean until I hung up. Sometimes validation doesn't fix the wound. It just proves you weren't hallucinating it. The following Sunday, Ben, my cousin, sent an invitation. A small dinner for my son's birthday. No drama. Just family who actually want to see you. It shouldn't have made me cry, but it did. For the first time in years, I felt the word family stretch into something warm again. That same evening, as Aiden and I packed the kids' overnight bags for the trip, my phone buzzed. No name, just a new number. Message, check your mailbox. We both froze. Downstairs, tucked halfway into the slot, was an envelope. My name, written in my sister's handwriting. Inside, a single torn notebook page. You win. They're on your side now, too. Hope it was worth it. No apology, no acknowledgement, just blame, her favorite language. Aiden watched my face. What is it? Nothing, I said, slipping the letter back into the envelope. Just the past, trying one last time. I tore it once, then again, until the pieces were small enough to fit in the palm of my hand. When I opened my fist, the fragments scattered into the summer breeze, vanishing faster than I thought they would. Aiden smiled. You good? Better than I've been in years, I said, and I meant it. That night, I stood at the kitchen window, city lights flickering like distant stars, and realized something simple. I hadn't lost my family. I'd just stopped belonging to people who never really saw me as one of them. The house was quiet. Our kind of quiet. The kind filled with the sounds of ordinary peace, running water, distant laughter from the kids' room, and Aiden humming off key as he washed the dishes. The kind that whispers, it's finally over. 3 months passed before the past found a new disguise. It came as an email from a Boston address I didn't recognize. Subject line, private trust inquiry, immediate attention. Normally, I would have deleted it. I'd learned to ignore anything that sounded like a baited hook, but this one was different. The sender's name, Jeremy Heller, triggered something faintly familiar, like a name I'd overheard at family dinners years ago when men talked business and women cleared the plates. I opened it. Ms. Donnelly, I represent a private estate associated with your late grandfather, Mr. Charles Donnelly. Certain assets were held in contingency under a secondary trust, with instructions to release upon your 35th birthday, provided specific conditions were met. I stopped reading, blinked once, and started over. Grandfather, 35th birthday. Conditions. I hadn't thought of him in years. He was the only one on my father's side who ever treated me like I mattered. An old man with nicotine-stained fingers and a soft voice who used to sneak me peppermint candies in church. He died a decade ago. I thought everything he owned had gone to my parents. Apparently not. Jeremy attached scanned documents. The trust, he explained, had been locked until I reached the age of 35 and had fully severed all financial ties with the family business. In short, I had accidentally qualified for an inheritance I never knew existed. That night, Aiden found me sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers and disbelief. He leaned over my shoulder. What's all this? My grandfather, I said slowly. He left me something. A lot of somethings, actually. I turned the laptop so he could see the numbers. Properties, stocks, accounts, even a small art collection. Stored in a warehouse outside Boston. Aiden whistled softly. You didn't know about any of this? No, I said. He must have set it up right before he died. The clause says it only transfers if I'm no longer tied to the company. Aiden smiled, half amazed, half proud. Guess you passed the test. Or survived it, I said. A week later, Jeremy called to confirm everything. He sounded almost pleased. Your grandfather anticipated this outcome, he said. He told our office, and I quote, if they ever choose themselves over her, she'll know what to do. I didn't speak for a moment. There was something about hearing that from beyond the grave, like being seen by someone who'd been gone so long. He continued, he wanted to make sure his legacy went to the one person who wouldn't use it to control anyone. That line lodged somewhere deep. Because control had been the currency of my family. Love was just the receipt they showed people after the damage was done. When the paperwork cleared, I flew to Boston to meet Jeremy in person. He handed me a set of keys and a letter sealed in yellowed envelope paper. Typed neatly, it read, if they ever choose themselves over you, walk away and don't turn back. I'll be waiting on the other side. CD. For the first time in my life, I cried over something written by a Donnelly. 2 months later, Aiden and I moved into a new place. Not extravagant, just light-filled, quiet, ours. The kids had their own rooms. The city noise felt softer here, as if even chaos respected boundaries now. Sometimes at night, when Aiden fell asleep first, I'd stand by the window and think about my grandfather, how he must have seen the storm long before I did and built me a shelter in secret. He didn't leave me money. He left me proof that I was right to walk away. That summer, Aiden suggested a road trip. No itinerary, he said. No plans. Just us, the open road, and a playlist that's 50% songs you'll skip. We laughed, packed light, and drove west until the map ran out of names we recognized. Somewhere in Colorado, we found a cabin on a lake. No service, no emails, no ghosts. On our last night, we sat on the dock, feet in the water, the world quiet except for crickets and the occasional splash of a fish that refused to be caught. Aiden handed me a mug of coffee and asked, "Do you think you'll ever talk to them again?" I looked at the water, at the ripples vanishing into black glass. "I think they already said goodbye," I said. "They just didn't realize it. The day they posted that photo, they handed me freedom. Wrapped in cruelty, but freedom all the same." He nodded. "So what now?" "Now," I said, "we build something that doesn't need saving." He smiled, leaned his head on my shoulder, and said, "Sounds like a plan." The night hummed with peace, the real kind, not the performative silence of family secrets. For once, I didn't need to look back to make sure the past was still behind me. I could feel it, quiet, distant, irrelevant. I had spent years carrying a legacy that was never meant to be mine. Now, I had one that finally was. And under the wide, endless sky, I whispered to the water, "Thank you, Grandpa. I made it."